I'm Hank van Rensburg, and I'm the Head of Supply Diversity for the ABSA Group. You're listening to Hustle Central.
We've just had a very fun meeting. I've never had so much fun in the boardroom before.
Hey yo, what's up? It's your boy Lisa Khumuluti, aka Joseph Stereo. Thank you for listening. This week we're gonna hear from the corporates. You know what I mean? I've got the head of supply development for ABSA talking to you. I've got the head of supply development at Accenture talking to you, and I've also got the head of procurement in Accenture talking to you about barriers. Are corporates a barrier for South African SMEs to enter markets? You know what I mean? So last week we had a very interesting conversation amongst ourselves as entrepreneurs. Now I want to bring the corporates in. Hank van Rensburg, Zandine Jamela, Linda Passon, the floor is yours.
My name is Linda Passon. I'm the procurement lead for Accenture in Africa, and I'm listening to Hustle Central.
A few months back, you and I were in a boardroom talking, and we were looking at a large piece of paper. It's called an agreement and a contract, right? But the whole point of my where I'm going is that you mentioned in the other room where the beneficiaries are this whole Busasa and state capture thing.
Yes.
How terms like ethical procurement and bribery and all these things are part of, I would say, the ecosystem now. It seems like they're part of our skills as businessmen, as entrepreneurs. What policies do you have in place as procurement to ensure that none of the people around you in your team are offering your suppliers or any beneficiary? I mean, there could be a beneficiary thinking, I want business, but I don't want business when I finish. I want business now, and I've got a little bit of money just to wet a couple of tongues to get me further than I actually am. How do you manage that process from either side?
So, I mean, the one thing anyone who ever works in my team has to be 100% honest. So integrity is something that I'm very, very particular about. So we are when we work with a supplier, we need to meet them face to face. We need to sit across the table. We need to talk openly about your cash flow, etc. And in those discussions is where you look for potential issues. So, for example, if you tell me your company is 100% black woman owned, I'm going to ask you to meet your lady shareholder, because people do a lot of window dressing, as we call it. So it needs to be real. And I would say to companies, be honest about your finances. Don't dress them up to look as if everything's fine. You know, be very honest in your dealings and say, look, I can only do this. These are my limitations. Or I don't have enough resources to do the work. Don't think that you can just get a few friends in to help you and then you deliver bad quality work. So it's really about laying yourself bare to some extent, okay? Being very honest. People still tend to like people that are very honest and saying, I need help here, or I'd like to do the following. And then I think it's a case of monitoring. So I think when we spoke, when we were doing contract negotiations, you know, and I need to protect Accenture as well, right? So I can't just give it all away to you. And I need to be honest with you as well and say, in terms of my business, I can't write out a check tomorrow, but I can pay you in so many days. Right. So I have to protect my company, but I also have to put the small company hat on. And there's sometimes different rules for big companies and small companies. You know, you accommodate them a little bit more.
Skimsa Kazani Jamela, what's your opinion?
There's a question that's bugging me. You know, a lot of corporates in this country profess to be supporting entrepreneurs, but on the other side, some entrepreneurs feel like they're not really getting what they need out of it. So my question to you is, do you believe that some corporates in this environment are barriers to SME entering certain markets?
Sure, that's a tough one. It's a tough one, let's hope, but what I can say is there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in incorporating SMEs into corporate supply chain. And Accenture is doing it well now because we've been doing this since 2006. And we are not doing it for BEE, so it's not a tick box exercise. We go through great lengths to select the right SMEs that we will procure from. And I feel that if more companies took that stance, we will have more SMEs flourishing in the market.
I want to give you a high five.
High five! Hi, my name is Daniel Njamela, and you are tuned into Hustle Central.
Thank you, Zandi Jamela. Thank you, Linda Passon, for joining this conversation. I'm going to keep on asking these hard questions because you know what? I want the truth. I'm after the truth about what's happening in our ecosystem as entrepreneurs so we can hustle better, so we can all make money. You know what I mean? So I was in a meeting with the head of supplier development for the ABSA group, Hank van Rensburg, and I saw this as the perfect time to ask him the same question like, brah, what's up with corporates bullying us SMEs? You know what I mean? Is that the name of the game? Check this out. This is what he had to say. This is Hustle Central.
You know, you work a lot with entrepreneurs, and ABSA, you know, supports entrepreneurs, whether it be through business banking, whether it be through the incubators or many different forms, you know what I mean? And many types of entrepreneurs, women, disabled, doesn't really matter. What are the challenges you faced, you know what I mean, with seeing entrepreneurs access new and existing markets?
One of the biggest challenges is the size of opportunity versus the capability of the entrepreneur to execute against the size of opportunity. So many times an entrepreneur will assume that if I walk in and I have 2 resources, I can deliver on a contract that potentially needs 10 resources. But you've also got to understand that whilst it's principally great to give that opportunity to an emerging entrepreneur, there's also a business stakeholder that has a customer at the end of the line. And the customer is the first port of call for that ABSA business stakeholder. So you will always have them saying, well, how do I weigh up making sure that I have successful execution on a project? And it becomes a challenge where I sit and I represent the entrepreneur internally, and I always look for the opportunity to make sure that we have mechanisms to find ways to include entrepreneurs in the value chain.
Now, considering, you know, I want to say our history, you know, considering where a lot of the mass population is sitting in terms of understanding what starting, running, and growing a business is like, because I read a lot on different articles about some corporates, you know, and how they bully entrepreneurs. So some entrepreneurs have a perspective of this is what business should be, you know what I mean? And when they get to sit with you as a corporate, they have a different perspective, whether they get told, I mean, one of the articles said the small business was being bullied by the big business because there was infringement of copyright names, for instance, you know what I mean? Something like that, you know, when the big business really wouldn't have a claim on that small business's market per se. How do you manage that in terms of, you know, you still a business, you still have to, you know, answer to your shareholders, you still have to meet your KPIs as a business. How do you then, you know, make it that bridge between supporting an entrepreneur and making sure that they don't infringe or you're not a barrier to their success?
It's a brilliant question because I think we live, firstly, understanding that ABSA, we operate within the continent as a whole. And within the continent, it's important to realize that your customer is also your supplier many times. How do you make sure that you're doing the right thing, not just from a shareholder perspective? I will never forget the first time I went to a Shared Value Summit. I heard that you get the shareholder you deserve. And within the society we live in, how do we become more empathetic and more contributory to the upliftment of where we live? So you start saying, well, I'm bringing an entrepreneur in. I cannot honestly want to bully that entrepreneur. And I see it happen. I've seen it happen all around me. And the challenge of that is, how do you start changing mindsets? Because there's been a traditional mindset that has been linked to a KPI that says, you will deliver, no maganja, it doesn't matter. And then you've got the entrepreneur that's saying, help me to learn to deliver for you. So rather than going down the route of bullying somebody, how do we understand what are the nuances to delivery? How do we understand what are the actual growth points and opportunities? Much like the conversation you and I had about what does scaling a business mean? And is it something that happens overnight? Probably not. But are we looking at the business plan together? Are we understanding why you are failing to deliver for me? And what remediation needs to be put in place? So bullying should be put aside and we should be saying, let's work together. I sit and I represent the entrepreneur internally, and I always look for the opportunity to make sure that we have mechanisms to find ways to include entrepreneurs in the value chain. I'm Hans van Rensburg, and I'm the Head of Supplier Diversity for the ABSA Group. You're listening to Hustle Central.
We've just had a very fun meeting. I've never had so much fun in the boardroom before.
I'm glad.
Boardroom should be a place of fun where we're connecting with the person on the other side of the table. There should be a place where we're learning from each other, not a place where we bully each other and show each other who's boss. That's not the point of this whole SME development thing. You know what I mean? From an SME side, I want to understand what a corporate wants from me, what's in it for the corporate. And for a corporate, they need to understand where I come from, my environment, and everything that makes me me. So this is why I think like I think. So don't take advantage of me. That's my message to you as a corporate. Thank you for listening to Hustle Central. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at @hustle_central. Peace. Hold the applause, hustle don't stop. We got a mission, got a cause, hustle don't stop. We got a vision for the cause, hustle don't stop. We keep on reaching for the stars, cause the struggle is rough, so we keep raising the bar. Hustle don't stop. We got a mission, got a cause, hustle don't stop. We got a vision for the cause, hustle don't stop. So we keep raising the bar, cause we're reaching for the top.
Hi everybody, I am Didi Mohapi. You are tuned into
Hustle Central. Hustle Central.
Hustle Central.
And you are listening to Hustle Central.
Let the hustle begin.
uyazi ukuthi thina ama-hustler senza kanjani.